I'm just a poor wayfaring stranger.
Howdy y'all, this here's the Christian Trucker, and this is my story, episode 14. Today we're going to talk about our building supply. The place I grew up in, the place I learned to work in, the place that paid for my many adventures in automobiles and dating. I started working when I was 12 years old. I see my older brother was working there, and I thought that I should be working there, so I volunteered to go to work at 12. And so I did. They let me go to work for my birthday when I turned 12. I started out sweeping all the slabs, started out putting up lumber, then I moved on to loading up customers, and I moved on to unloading the trucks with the forklifts, and then I got to drive the trucks out on deliveries and so forth and so on. Eventually moved inside to do waiting on the customers, running the cash registers and that kind of thing, bookkeeping. I did a little bit of everything at this building supply, but a historical accounting of this business is my grandfather had retired from the Air Force. He retired from Georgia Pacific, and then he decided he wanted to open his own business. So he goes to this small town in Mississippi and he buys an old hotel. Well, he takes this old hotel and he turns it into a building supply. What he did is the main hall there, he turned that into the retail space. And the outer rooms, which had a parking lot between the hotel hall and the rest of the rooms, he took the fronts off of those rooms and he turned those into lumber racks. So over the years, it turned in to be a pretty nice sized business. We actually ended up buying property across the highway and expanding. The business was great. I mean, I got to meet a lot of people. I got to do a lot. My grandfather, I don't know if he even knew how well it would take off. See, a couple of times through the years, early on in the building supplies history, there were some storms that came in and it tore up people's roofs and tore up their houses and stuff, and people had to go and they get shingles and they get stuff to repair their homes, and those items really gave us a boom and kept us afloat. I mean, we delivered so many shingles. Oh my gosh, it was crazy. But my grandpa eventually, he decided he wanted to start trying to get out of it, so he started trying to bring in a couple of people, college educated people, to come in and to run the business for him. But they were failures. They ended up causing him more headache than taking headache away. And that's what happens sometimes. Sometimes you got to have somebody with some common sense, which is eventually exactly what he got. He ended up bringing my dad on board to run the place. My dad, he's high school educated, no college degree, worked hard his whole life. He came in there and with the real Mississippi work ethic, he built that business up. I mean, bigger than my grandpa ever thought it was going to be. He really got in there day and night, weekends. People call him after hours. He was going, even if it wasn't nothing to sell, one plumbing fitting. My dad had a way with people. He had a way of work that made him stand out and made people want to come back to his business and want to deal with him. He had friends that would come in and drink coffee every morning and just to visit, and the customers would come in just to chat and talk, and he would sell so much stuff just because he was willing to talk to people and listen to people. But at the same time, he had this personality of he didn't take crap from nobody. And I think people really grasped onto him because had a I don't care what you think about me attitude, but at the same time, he'd give you the shirt off his back, and he wouldn't take crap off of anybody. And somebody was giving you crap, you could tell him, and chances are he'd say something to the other person about it if they were just being petty or whatever. He didn't have no bones about it. That's just the way he ran the business, and the business just seemed to thrive around that. Because so many people nowadays are fake. And that's one thing that my dad has never been called is fake. If you ever want an opinion, you better be careful when you ask him, because he's going to give it to you flat and honest. That's the way I think everybody should be. But they're not. You know, that's just the nature of life. So, you know, after my dad got hurt, you know, there for a while, he ended up in a recliner inside of the business because his back was so bad. And he would go back and forth to the doctors, and they were like, nothing's wrong with you. Well, he was paralyzed. We got home, he had went home, and he couldn't even get out of the tub. So me and Mama had to get him out of the tub, get him to the doctor, and not only did they find one place in his back that was like closed off, they ended up finding two, and they did surgery on him that day, and they got him back where he could walk. We didn't, at that point when he left the house that day, we didn't know if he was ever going to be able to walk again. But they got him back where he could walk, and they said he was going to have degenerative arthritis the rest of his life because the nerve coating on the nerves was gone. And see, he was already in the process of purchasing another building supply, building another building supply up in a neighboring town, a couple of towns over. Anyway, when he got down with this, he all he had to do is still sign the papers. But luckily, he didn't even sign the papers yet, so he didn't get stuck with this business that he couldn't run because he was hurt. Because him and my grandfather had been at odds. See, my grandfather wanted to keep expanding and growing, and my dad had the business built up to a point of where everybody was comfortable. Everybody was able to the whole family lived off of this business. We all worked there. We all made a check. Everybody was getting fat and happy. And that's the way my dad was. You know, he would get it comfortable, and that's all he needed. He didn't need much. Even today, he don't need much. He just wants, you know, to be comfortable and everybody be happy, no stress. That's a great way to be. I'm telling you, if you can find a way to be satisfied and be that way, do it. That makes a good life. Now, my grandfather, on the other hand, he wanted to keep expanding, and he had these great ambitions, and that drove wedges between the two. And ended up, my dad was ready to go build another building supply way away from this one. But he got down so bad where he couldn't. And then, you know, he couldn't work. My mom and my grandpa had a bad split whenever my dad couldn't work anymore. It drove them out of the business. I stayed in the business because that was my job. It wasn't to choose sides of the family or anything. It's just what I did. And my mom went to work at a wire harness factory. And she worked at wire harness factories, and then she went to work at Walmart, a couple of other things. It wasn't ideal jobs, especially not for somebody with her background and her abilities. But that's where she went, and that's what she did. When Dad couldn't work, she went to work. And that's what a good woman will do. She'll take care of you whenever you're down. But like I said, I stayed at the building supply, and eventually my grandfather asked me if I would run it. And this is the best and the dumbest decision that I've ever made in my entire life. I told him no. The reason why is because I wasn't even 18 yet. I was too busy partying, chasing women. I was running the roads. I was living the fast life. I mean, I would bake my money, and as soon as that clock hit 5, I was out of there. I had other fish to fry, and that's where I was going to get the grease hot. So I told him no. And today I kicked myself in the butt because I love to run a business. I really enjoy what I'm doing now, and I would have really enjoyed that, except for the fact that it was a very public business. You had to deal with the public. Now, I grew to like dealing with the public back then, but now that I've been out of it for so long, I don't want to do it anymore. No qualms about it. I do not want to work with the public anymore if I can help it, because the public can be a pain in the rump. The things I seen them do in that building supply, the rudeness, the self-centeredness that some people exhibit, just amazed me. But he asked me to do that, and I told him no. And they had took one of my cousin's children in to raise. It was a little young baby, and the girl that had him couldn't take care of her. So they decided they were going to move back to their home state of Alabama, right close to the Century, Flomaton area. That's where all their people from my grandma and my grandpa's side were from. And they decided they were going to move back, and that's what they did. They sold their home, the one that had raised me and my brother and my cousins. They sold the store, and whenever they did, they just left the state. They left and they went and started all over in another place, which was hard for me to understand, really, because you've built all these roots and these friendships here, and then you just leave everything and go over there. I guess it shouldn't be too hard because they're originally from there, but man, that's a lot of time. 30-something years, I think, to build up these relationships and let these roots grow and then just up and leave it. Honestly, that really probably messed up a lot of my family, that one move right there, because they kind of bound everybody together, even though they could be hard to deal with sometimes, but who ain't? So used to love to work at the building supply because I had all our old trucks, our old forklifts. We had Datsun hard wheel forklift, and that thing, you could get off the concrete onto the gravel. You might make it a little piece, but you ain't gonna make it far. That thing will get stuck just about every time. And we had a Hyster forklift, and it ran good, and it would pick up a pretty good load. I really enjoyed that one. And I had a 1972 Ford 1-ton short wheelbase. I had a 78 Ford long wheelbase 1-ton. We had, I think it was a 62 2-ton with a long bed on it. It was like a 16 or 18 foot long bed. That thing was fun to drive. It was solid too. I mean, you turn the key, it would crank up every time. I want to say it had like a 360. One of them older engines. I want to say, honestly, I want to say 362, but I just don't think that's the number. 360 is a Ford engine. Anyway, I digress. It don't really matter. It was an old Ford, and we enjoyed to run it. We would haul shingles and sheetrock. We'd haul 200 pieces of 12-foot sheetrock on that big old truck and have to tote every one of them up in the house. Now, that's the day's work. When you go to hauling between 200 and 300 pieces of sheetrock and deliver them in the house, you had 1/2 inch and 5/8 on the truck. 5/8 was the devil, let me tell you. Toting that mess up in the house, golly, that stuff will kill you. And then we had those shingle loads. You throw some on the roof, back up to the carport, try to throw some on the roof, and throw the rest on the ground. Dadgummit, look at her. I'm running out of time. God bless y'all. We'll catch you on the next ride.